Going up at number 10 now, we have the Snake Man. For many years now, there has been a story going around Manila of a half snake, half human hybrid that stalks local malls there. The mall belongs to Robinson's Malls, which is owned by Robina Gokong Wei. People say that she had a set of twins. One of them was born normal, the other came out as a half snake, half human, with an insatiable appetite for human flesh. Robina panicked about what she would do with this creature that was still her child, and so she came up with a plan. She is said to have opened up the shopping mall there so that she could hide her son in the basements and tunnels below it. According to the stories, as shoppers try clothes on inside the dressing rooms, they will be swallowed by remote controlled floors where the Snake Man will be waiting to devour them below. In 2015, a video emerged online claiming to show the Snake Man's body. It appears to be dead. The video remains unverified though, and this strange urban legend lives on. Next up at number 9 now, we have the elevator. There are variations of this urban legend all over the Philippines, but they often follow the same pattern. A doctor in a hospital walks into an elevator with another patient inside. As they face the doors, they see a small boy running down the hallway towards the elevator, his eyes wide and pale. The doctor quickly presses the closed door button and the boy is shut out just as he gets to the elevator. As the elevator makes its journey down to the basement, the patient turns to the doctor and says, "Why did you do that? The little boy wanted to get on and you stopped him." The doctor just shakes their head slowly and says, "I wanted to, I really did, but he had a red wristband on. We only put those on people that have died." The patient then looks down for a moment in silence and then raises their own arm up to the doctor, smiles and says, "Just like my one." At number 8 now, we have Mount Banahor. This is a well-known and sacred mountain in the Philippines, but with all the respect it receives, it also has its fair share of scary stories. Perhaps the most famous one involves the disappearing hikers. Locals say they go up the mountain and never return. No trace of them is ever found. They say this is actually a landing site for alien spaceships, and those aliens have been abducting the hikers for years. These visitations have been witnessed by hundreds of people, including a TV crew who filmed it. One story involves some hikers spending the night on the slopes of the mountain. One of them woke up and decided to sleep outside of the tent as it would be more comfortable for them. Then there was a blinding light and the hiker woke up. It was the next morning and they were on top of an entirely different mountain, miles away. They eventually reunited with the other hikers and said they had no explanation for how they ended up so far away, except that they had been abducted by aliens. Next up at number 7 now, we have the My Way killings. In the early 2000s, a fear gripped people across the Philippines. A particular song seemed to be killing people. My Way by Frank Sinatra. It was a popular karaoke choice at the time, but became infamous for a number of deaths related to it. In 2007, for example, a 29-year-old man singing at a bar in San Mateo, Rizal was shot dead as he sang the song at karaoke by the bar's security guard. Why? Because the guard thought the man's rendition was out of tune, and when the victim refused to stop singing, the guard pulled out his pistol and shot him dead. This became a fairly common story, with at least 10 documented cases between 2002 and 2012. People began to associate singing the song with being killed. In 2007, the song was actually taken off karaoke machines in many bars in Manila. Even people who were skeptical before will choose to avoid this song for fear of invoking the curse. Next up at number 6 now, we have the Headless Priest. This legend goes back hundreds of years, kept alive by just how grisly and gruesome it is. During the Filipino Revolution and World War II, many Filipino priests were beheaded by soldiers. As many of you are probably aware, a common theme with ghosts is that they cannot find rest until they have found the peace which they could not in life. These headless priests, that peace can only be found when they are reunited with their heads. Many people claim to have seen their ghosts prowling graveyards at night, searching for their heads, or perhaps even more scarily, carrying them under their arms, looking for a way to reattach them. They cannot speak, but they will still approach you if they see you, in the hopes that you can reattach their head and send them to the afterlife. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the Devil's Mountain. We talked about Mount Banahor earlier. If that's the good and sacred mountain, then this might be the polar opposite. Its name is Mount Cristobal, and it has gathered a reputation for being the home of many evil creatures, perhaps even the devil himself. There have been a number of cases of hikers going missing along the dark and dense trails there. Officials put it down to poor choices or inexperience, but many locals disagree. They say that supernatural beings have been attacking people as they try to climb the mountain. Naturally, this puts a lot of people off, but some relish the idea of this. It's a common belief that if you can get through the dense forest and fight off these supernatural creatures, you can reach the top and challenge the devil himself. For many people though, simply feeling the ominous presence as they approach the mountain is more than enough for them. Next up at number 4 now, we have the Bloody Bridge. The San Juanico Bridge is said to be the longest bridge in the Philippines, but for many people in the area, that's not why it's well known. It connects the sister islands of Samar and Leyte. It was built as a gift from Ferdinand Marcos, former president of the Philippines, to his wife Imelda, who was a native of Leyte. He left her in charge of the building. During its construction, locals began to notice a number of children were disappearing from both Samar and Leyte. Then, when the bridge was complete, the children just stopped vanishing. How were the two connected? Well, this is the gruesome part. Some people say the foundations of the bridge were made stronger by mixing in the blood of babies and street children using an ancient ritual used to strengthen structures. Some even say the bodies of the children were added to the cement mixer by the construction workers while preparing the cement. Amazingly, there are even more gory versions of the story out there. The only thing they have in common is that this bridge may not have been made in the normal way. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the Romblon Triangle. You guys may have heard of the Bermuda Triangle before. Well, this is kind of the Filipino equivalent. Over the years, this area has seen many ships disappear under mysterious circumstances. If they manage to not disappear, many ships have gone down in tragic circumstances. Since 1980, a number of passenger ships have sunk, some of which with thousands of passengers on board. Then there is the legend of the ghost ship. The ship was owned by Lolo Amang in life and now haunts the waters. It's said to be made of gold and glimmers in the night. On April 22nd, 1980, the Don Juan passenger ship crashed into an oil tanker with 1,000 people on board. It quickly sank. Survivors said that just before the crash, they saw the ghost ship approaching them. There seemed to be some sort of party on board as it glimmered in the night. The captain of the Don Juan tried to swerve out of the way to avoid the ghost ship and ended up crashing into the oil tanker, which ultimately sank them. Officials say the strange occurrences are nothing more than bad weather or bad luck, but locals say that far too many stories have come from the triangle for it to be just bad weather. Next up, number 2 now, we have the White Lady of Balete Drive. This one comes from Quezon City, where locals believe one street is haunted above all others, all thanks to the White Lady. She is said to be a harbinger of death, a revenge ghost that wants the living to feel the fear and terror that she felt before she died. She has been seen since the 1950s, appearing and then vanishing along that road, even materializing inside people's cars as they drive. The stories tend to go the same way. A driver will be going down the road when they see a beautiful woman standing by the side looking for a lift. They pick her up, but after a while of talking, they look in their rear view mirror to see that her face is twisted, torn, bruised and oozing with blood. Locals have learned to not pick up hitchhikers on that road and to certainly never look in the rear view mirror. Several taxi drivers have been said to crash in that area from the shock of seeing the White Lady. Many say this is what she wants, to cause the pain and suffering which led to her own death on that dark and creepy road. And finally, number 1 now, we have Maria Labo. This is the name of a famous woman in some parts of the Philippines. They say she was a vampire. In life, she was a caring mother and wife who wanted to give the best life to her family. One day she signed up as an overseas Filipino worker and moved to Canada to care for sick people. One of the patients there was dying from an unknown disease. Later on, before his dying breath, the patient leant in and bit Maria, passing on his vampiric powers to her. She accepted the power without knowing the price that she would have to pay. Maria returned to the Philippines, where her hunger for human blood began to grow. She could contain it no longer and eventually killed and cooked her own 2 sons. After that, she became an aswang, a Filipino folklore creature that feasts on humans. Her husband returned home to find what she had done and flew into a rage. He attacked her and slashed her face with a bolo knife. She managed to escape though, and now locals say that if you ever see her lurking in the shadows, you'll know it's her from the huge scar across her face, and then it's up to you to start running. Going off number 10 now, we have Biringan City. This is a mythical city that's said to lie between the real Filipino areas of Gandara, Tarangnan and Pagsanghan. Here's the thing, it's said to be completely invisible. According to local folklore, the entire population of Biringan City is comprised of supernatural beings. They are shapeshifters who take human form and sometimes invite outsiders like us to visit their city. If you're invited, be aware that time does not move the same in this city. Seconds become minutes, minutes become hours. Some who say they've been there have left to find that they've been missing for weeks when almost no time has passed at all for them. The most common reports of the city come from sailors who claim to have seen seen a dazzling city of lights on moonless nights for a few minutes. They describe it as beautiful, with high-rise buildings and advanced technology. One story said that a Japanese company saw bright tracts of land in the area from a satellite image. Now they thought it was gold and began setting up sites in a nearby town, but mysterious accidents and mishaps forced them to shut down the operation. Invisible City. Do you guys think that's the perfect cover, or a little bit far-fetched? Moving on to number 9 now, we're going to talk about the Encanto. Some people say these are actually the supernatural beings who inhabit the invisible city we just talked about. Either way, they are believed to live throughout the whole of the Philippines. The Encanto are mythical environmental spirits that are said to have the ability to appear in human form. They're often associated with the spirits of people's ancestors. Physically, they're meant to look like elves, sirens, and other sort of dark magical beings. They are similar to humans. They age, they have males and females, they can suffer from illness and even die. Some appear to be fair in complexion with blue eyes and golden hair. They live in natural homes such as large rocks or trees, but can make these appear like magical palaces to humans. They're enchanting creatures, but everyone who hears the stories knows to avoid them. They can cause fevers and skin diseases or lead travelers into the forest to kidnap them. Next up at number 8 now, we have the Sirena. These creatures are the Filipino version of mermen. They are said to be hideous, with scales covering their entire bodies in colours ranging from brown to green and gill slits positioned in various places so that they can breathe underwater. Their upper bodies vaguely resemble the form of a man, tapering down to the tail of a fish with scale-encrusted legs and webbed feet. Various legends depict them with powerful green tentacles, fins, webbed hands, claws, and other appendages. They're also said to have very sharp teeth, which make them formidable predators. The scary part is they are hostile to all humans, who they drown in the depths of the sea and then devour as food. Also, many stories involve them causing shipwrecks just to eat the sailors on board. Their bloodthirsty nature, coupled with their extreme intelligence, makes them a terrifying predator. Kind of reminds me of another species we're all familiar with. Next up at number 7 now, we have the jeepney ride. This is a story shared by a Filipino girl about her friend. One day, her friend went home late after finishing off a school project. She took the local jeepney bus because it was late. A jeepney is a popular means of public transport in the Philippines. On the journey, she kept noticing the driver was looking at her in his rearview mirror. She got worried when he began to take turns in the road that he was not meant to. However, she was even more scared of being left in the middle of nowhere and so decided to not say anything. Eventually though, he took them back onto the correct route and they arrived safely at her destination. He turned to her and said, "I'm sorry if I scared you or startled you. It was not my intention. Could you do me a favor and burn all your clothes when you get home?" He continued saying, "The reason why I kept glancing was because your head was not attached to your body when I looked at you through my rear view mirror. That is why I changed my route a while ago, hoping we could get away from this bad energy. And that's why I want you to burn your clothes when you get home, because I think it is still with you." The girl was obviously shocked by this and ran home, quickly burning her clothes in a fire. A few days later, she heard on the news that the driver had died a day after the incident. It was then that she realized the warning in the mirror was not for her, but for him. Next up at number 6 now, we have the Aswang. These are shapeshifters who live among their human neighbors without us ever knowing. They've been described as a ghoulish combination of a vampire and a werewolf. There seems to be no single coherent solid description of what these creatures look like. Some say it's essentially a werewolf in appearance, others say it's closer to a vampire. The only common theme is that the Aswang are always shapeshifters. They live normal lives among villagers and then at night they change. The Aswang morph into various creatures to hunt their prey, which is usually young children or unborn fetuses, which they suck out and devour directly from the mother's womb. Very gross, I know, but it's part of the story when it comes to these hideous creatures. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the Tiyanak. This is otherwise known as the demon child and is another mythical creature in Philippine mythology. They are said to be babies who die before being baptized. After death they go to a place called Limbo, which is neither heaven nor quite hell. They are transformed into evil spirits. The phantasms return to our world as these demonic goblin-like creatures looking to eat their human victims. It can also be the offspring of a demon and a human. Most Tiyanaks are said to live in the forest where, if they do see a human, they will transform into what looks like a normal baby, just lying on the ground. Naturally, most people will try and aid a helpless baby in the forest. When they get close though, that's when a demon child changes back to its true form and kills the helpless human. Next up at number 4 now, we have De La Salle University. This place is known as a place of learning around the country, but locals know it has a lot of dark stories within its walls. The main building is said to be haunted by soldiers who died bloody deaths in World War II. The chapel in this building was used by refugee families, many of whom were massacred by Japanese soldiers. Their spirits are said to live in these rooms they called home for a while. In modern times, students students have reported strange happenings in the chapel. One of them involved an accounting student visiting the chapel to pray before a big exam. As he settled into one of the pews, she heard footsteps coming towards her, which suddenly stopped. Then she felt a pair of hands on her face, and when she opened her eyes, there before her was a man in a torn and bloodied soldier's uniform. He had a bayonet through his chest and was gurgling for help through the pool of blood in his mouth. When telling this story to her friends, she assured them she knew it was a ghost, but she had never seen anything so real in front of her and just so terrifying. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the jellyfish blackout. On December 10th, 1999, in the city of Luzon, most of the lights went out. The city was plunged into darkness. Authorities said a large number of jellyfish had been sucked into the seawater intake of a major power plant near Manila, clogging up the mechanism. Reports began to spread that it wasn't just normal jellyfish that caused the blockage, it was giant mutant ones. They had been sucked up from the bowels of the ocean, and as soon as the blockage was cleared, they would begin terrorizing the city's waterways, even lurking in the sewers below people. Some say that's where they remain today, multiplying in numbers. Moving on to number 2 now, we have the duende. These are often called the dwarves of the Philippines. They are mythical creatures said to live in small hills around the country. The mounds are so small they actually resemble ant hills. They come out at specific times, 6 AM, 12 PM, 6 PM, 12 AM, and so on. They have pointed noses, hideous teeth, long white hair, and very angry eyes. They are said to bring you fortune or bad luck. Most people would rather avoid them altogether though. One story of them came from a guy who was burning old coconuts on a farm. It was around 6 PM. He saw something shiny around the bushes. It blinked furiously. As he approached the bushes, something crawled out of it towards him. Standing there was a duende. It offered him a gold ring and told him to keep it, even though he didn't want to. He remembered his mum had told him that if he ever sees anything out of the ordinary when interacting with one of these creatures, just leave it be. Then the creature snapped its fingers and disappeared. Some people say if you take something from them, they will always ask for something in return, and it will be a whole lot of trouble for you to get it. And finally at number 1 now, we have the Capri. He is also known as the smoking monster. This legendary creature is said to be as big as a 2-story building and hairy all over. It lies dormant in an old large tree in the forest. Generally speaking, they are friendly creatures, but only up to a point. You see, the Capri love to smoke tobacco. They almost always have some sort of cigar burning away. When travelers go to the mountains or the woods, they should be wary of the Capri. If he sees a beautiful woman walking past his tree, he will blow smoke out until it becomes an intoxicating cloud around her. At that point, she will lose consciousness and he will kidnap her. If she tries to fight or if someone tries to save her, the Capri will get violent. Likewise, the way to make a Capri very angry is to destroy his home or indeed any tree in that forest. When loggers mow down a whole forest and smoke is seen spiraling up from the ashes, they say the cloud of the Capri is looking for its next victim.
Coming in number 10, we have Le Peril House. Let's kick this off like we're in a Resident Evil game and head over to a haunted mansion. Here's a good question for all of you in the comments. Would you spend a night in a haunted mansion if that meant you could keep it? I think that would be a hard no for me, because what am I going to do with a haunted mansion after I own it? I don't want to stay in it, and I definitely don't think anyone is going to buy it. Well, Le Peril House is one of the most famous haunted mansions in the world, and it got its ghostly reputation for a good reason. During the Pacific War, the Japanese soldiers came through and needed a place to house some of their troops. They started to take any large building and use it as a garrison, and the Le Peril House was one of the most infamous, because when another country's troops come through and then you house them, they would be really grateful for you doing such a thing, and they would treat the residents with respect. No, that doesn't happen at all. The Le Peril House was a site of a ton of horrible tortures. It said that the wailing of someone being tortured to death can still be heard from the ghosts that walk the halls, and there has also been several executions that took place at this mansion. So if you want to see the head of a ghost rolling down some stairs, this would be the best place to find it. Coming in number 9, we have Clark Air Base Hospital, Pampanga. Let's jump from one war story right into another. This airbase hospital was mostly used by American soldiers during the Second World War. As you can imagine, it wasn't a very jolly place to go visit back then. Most of the people who were taken to this hospital were either injured in combat or suffering from some terrible sickness that occurred while they were in the Filipino jungles. That's the problem with waging war on unfamiliar grounds. You can get attacked by things you never expected. There's a lot of troops who died in agony in this hospital, and as you can imagine, a death in suffering brings with it a lot of ghosts. Shadow figures have been seen walking through the halls, and it's very normal to hear the sounds of someone weeping when no one else is around. Coming in number 8, we have Malinta Tunnel, Corregidor. I'm giving you back-to-back hospitals on this one. Why? Because they're a hot spot for ghosts, you silly goose. And just so we're clear, this was a tunnel that was turned into a hospital. Well, not so much a hospital, but a sick bay for injured American troops, and as you can imagine, there has been a lot of people who have died there. The area is now famous for ghostly figures walking around at night. They probably don't even know that they're dead, so it's safe to say that this tunnel isn't somewhere you want to get stuck after the sun goes down. Coming in at number 7, we have Manila City Hall. You know your country has some good spooky stuff when the city hall is infested with ghosts. That's cool as hell. Well, apparently this place is packed with ghosts and they show up like clockwork. As soon as the sun starts going down, spooky stuff will start to pop up all over the building. You get all the standard ghost stuff going on here. People say there's footsteps coming from floors that have no people on them. You can hear whispering coming out of thin air. There's even reports of doors bursting open randomly. I mean, if you're going to be a ghost, you could at least be polite and not slam any of the doors. Thank you very much. Coming in at number 6, we have Mount Maja-Az. This island is haunted by a ton of stuff that is outside the world of ghosts, but is still very supernatural. Apparently this place has everything mystical going on over there. There have been reports of dwarves and elves on the island that are apparently really nice. If you come to the island with good intentions, then they will bless you with good luck. But if you come over there with some bad vibes, they will send you a ton of bad mojo that will ruin your whole life. Now there is something over there that is pretty creepy and would keep me away from this island even though they're supposed to be good luck giving dwarves. Apparently this place is also home to some vampires that roam the island looking for new victims to suck the life out of. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a hot vacation spot for me. Coming in number 5, we have Baja Nepula San Ildefonso Bulacan. This is another place that the Japanese used as a garrison while they were waging war. And I don't know if you know this about the Japanese, but even though they seem cute and cuddly now, they weren't always like that. The Japanese used to be brutal. They would try to completely eradicate other cultures, and they saw themselves as the superior Asian race. All others were disposable, and the way they treated the Filipino people was horrible. At Baja Nepula, many people were beaten, tortured, and even the place has such a horrible history that the building has been abandoned ever since, and no one will go close to it. It's said that it has a horrible curse on it. Coming in at number 4, we have Herrera Mansion, Quezon. Now we're moving to a place that has a couple of famous ghosts. It's one thing to have a haunted attraction that has some voices and screams coming out of it, or has stories of people feeling cold spots, but actually seeing the same ghost over and over, that's something you can sell tickets to. Apparently there is a ghost of a Japanese soldier that will wander the property. He sometimes yells out or vanishes and then reappears in an instant. I mean, that's kind of spooky, but I've got a little added bonus that will make the whole thing a lot spookier. The ghost is headless. Yeah, that's exactly what you need to give this place a little extra spooky vibe. Now, even though our headless soldier is the star of the show, there's another set of ghosts that have been seen quite often. There's a ghost couple that has been seen walking around hand in hand around the building. It's thought that they could be the original owners of the building. Coming in at number 3, we have Balete Drive, one of the most famous kinds of hauntings you can have, the Lady in White. There's a house on Balete Drive that is apparently home to a lady in white. She loves to watch people as they walk by and apparently doesn't like men very much. This could be because it's suspected that she was killed by Japanese soldiers. If you're a man driving by the Lady in White's home, she might use her supernatural powers to teleport into your back seat, and when you look into your rear view mirror, you will see her staring back at you with her body drenched in blood. Hopefully she doesn't leave a blood stain on the new leather. Coming in number 2, we have Diplomat Hotel by Guyo. It's safe to say that the events that took place at the Diplomat Hotel were not very diplomatic. I would describe them as horrific and unnecessary, but that's just me. This hotel was a hotspot for executions. This is a place where many nuns and priests were rounded up in an attempt to destroy Catholicism in the Philippines. These nuns and priests were executed in front of everyone, and their heads were then kicked down the steps. Major disrespect on so many levels. Well, when you cut off the heads of that many people, then you're going to anger some ghosts. There's a ton of spirits that call this place home, and many of them are headless. There's so many headless ghosts at this place they don't even have one superstar. They all work together as one major attraction. Coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Ilolio. Let's step away from ghosts for a little while and check out something else supernatural that is haunting the island of Ilolio. Turns out there is something way scarier than a vampire in the Philippines. If you thought that the headless ghosts were bad, then this thing is going to make you wish you were surrounded by them. This area in the Philippines is a apparently home to the Tik-Tik. It patrols the land and should be something that you try to avoid at all costs. The Tik-Tik is described as a large bird or bat and will stalk people as they walk in the dark and sneak up on them, and then use its long tongue to start drinking their blood. But that's where its terrifying traits just start. Apparently this creature likes the taste of unborn children. It will find a woman who's pregnant and wait for her to go to sleep. Then it will use its long tongue to pierce the woman's stomach, but do it in such a way where she doesn't wake up. And while she's asleep, the Tik-Tik will eat her baby. That sounds horrific. Thankfully, a simple amulet that has been blessed with some holy water will keep this creature at bay.